Karl Marx famously said that religion was the opium of the people. Well, if he were alive today, he would probably reconsider that conclusion and propose that endurance sport is the real drug of the masses. Barely a weekend goes by without a marathon, adventure race or triathlon taking place, and going long, as it's called, is the big fix. Among all these sports, one event stands head and shoulders above the rest as the daddy of going long. And that event is the Devizes to Westminster canoe race.
The senior doubles race, which is the blue ribboned event, sees crews of 2 paddling either a double kayak or a double canoe from Devizes in Wiltshire to Westminster in London. That's 125 miles non-stop, right through the night and in all weathers. The Devizes to Westminster, or DW as it's affectionately known, is a race with a rich heritage, and 2009 was set to be a classic vintage. It would be the event's 61st year, but perhaps more significantly, it would be the 30th anniversary of the course record set by Brian Greenham and Tim Cornish, who had reformed to tackle the race again. Also competing would be former winner Ollie Harding and young pretenders Owen Peake and Danny Seaford. Add to this a number of overseas crews flying in, and the race was looking more spectacular by the day. Devizes. First light Saturday morning and already the paddock was full. A unique feature of the race is that crews base their performance calculations not so much on how long it will take them to complete the race, but how long it will take them to reach Teddington Lock on the western fringe of London, nearly 20 miles short of the finish. Each crew chooses their own start time in order to reach Teddington for the high tide, where the Thames becomes tidal. It is essential for them to catch the ebbing high tide, to get as much assistance from the flow as possible downstream to Westminster. This year, the high tide prediction at Teddington was between 5:30 and 7:30 on Sunday morning, so the slowest crews would start early on Saturday, some choosing to go as soon as the start line opened at 7 a.m. On arrival, crews would get their boat and kit checked by the officials, then go to registration to collect their number and a safety tag. From there, they would make final preparations, then head to the start for the obligatory start line photo. Right on the dot of 7, they were off. Brian Elliott and David Meacock leading the way with John Morris and Ian McHugh alongside in the canoe. All sorts of boats were starting early, as many of the paddlers were embarking on a personal challenge to complete the course rather than going for a fast time, so stability and comfort were the top of their list. There were also a large number of military boats, upholding the long tradition of forces participation. And some paddlers clearly weren't sure if they would make it at all. The DW is immensely important to the town of Devizes, and everyone has their own personal connection with the race.
To the town, it's tradition. It does at least put Devizes on the map, but to me personally, it is, well, what I've known all my life. Every Good Friday, we've always come up ever since I was little and watched the boats, as it's called, to go off. And of course, as I've got older, I personally know two of the four men that started it, so it's very special.
Have you ever had a go in a canoe?
Once when I was on holiday in Corfu, and I'd rather forget about that. It was not a pleasant experience. No, me and water don't go.
And it would seem that the mayor isn't alone in having a somewhat strained relationship with the water.
How many times has this happened, this close to the start line?
It's a first, isn't it?
Is it?
You've got the record, yes.
That was not the answer. Yeah, loads of times. At least we've got 8 lines open.
I'm plucking up courage to ask you how you feel about it.
I don't feel great. I have to say. Confidence has dropped a little bit. Like you got survival bags.
And just so that we can let others know, what does the water feel like?
It's not that bad actually. It's pretty tasty once you're in. The concept of going in is not very pleasant, I think.
While I tried to give the lads a few tips to get them going again, plenty of other crews were heading out on their own adventure.
In the front paddle as well.
What's that?
Left to right, your paddle, turn it.
So the slim bit is at the bottom. No, on the left, that's me. Flip it 180. No.
Left to right. Bless them. That's all I can say. Bless them.
Everything Swedish on radio's dying.
Seems like my advice didn't quite get through though. Oh well, you can but try.
And in Cornish, who hold the 30-year-old record for the event. They're here today as well. And of course, obviously we've got James Cracknell, the Olympic gold medalist team, who's taking part around about 9 o'clock.
James, you've had an extraordinary couple of years. You've done some amazing things, and now the Devizes to Westminster. How does this fit in?
Yeah, I've been really lucky. I've done a variety since I stopped rowing. Rowing across the Atlantic was the sort of first foray into doing something different, and then been lucky enough to do some other racing, and then Bruce did a trip to Antarctica, and it's nice if you do one sport for so long, it kind of stops you doing anything else, and there's loads of other things to do, and especially in Britain as well, there's so many good races, and this is one that so a lot of my time rowing at Henley, we'll be training over this weekend, and you see people going through all hours of the day, and as much as rowers and canoeists tradition don't get on, you know, one group seems to go on the wrong side of the river all the time, and the other group don't look where they're going, so it's not really a match made in heaven, but it's and especially at the Olympics you share lakes with these guys as well, so you appreciate how not only phenomenally fit they are, but the skill it takes to balance the top K1s, and this event is a combination of getting the right boat that you can balance and also toughing it out through the night, and I think it's going to be as hard a day in sport as I've ever had, because it's not if you could choose a time of year to be up through the night in water, it wouldn't be April. You know, it would be middle of summer, and which I think is going to make it really hard. Luckily, it actually doesn't seem too cold today, so hopefully the night won't be so bad. And I also know a lot of the stretches from Reading down very well and how long they are, and so getting to Reading you're halfway, but you're not even actually anywhere near halfway. So it's going to be a really tough day, and it's one of the things that make you very proud to sort of come from this country, not just the number of people that are prepared to get up the Easter weekend to do this, but the number of volunteers and everyone else. And it's amazing starting a really small canal here, and then hopefully in a day or so we'll be at Westminster.
So is this paddle just for yourselves, or are you doing it for a cause as well?
Well, I mean, I wanted to do the race, I wanted to do it with Bernie, and Bernie's money as well.
Well, it's a good opportunity, and also it's a great opportunity to promote a charity, and I've chosen Clip Sergeant, which is really caring for children and their families with cancer. So paddling 125 miles, what a great billboard.
Wish you every luck on the race.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Pusey Wharf, first checkpoint, 11.5 miles in. a shakedown period. The boat's now beginning to run, all being well, and good to get to Pewsey and to see the support crew and know that they found their way down the road and everything is okay, having got rid of those pre-race nerves, and know that the weather is stable and all is good for the next 115 miles. One of the challenges with Pewsey Wharf is the start of one of the preparation races, and there's a temptation to think this is just going to be another of those races, another 10 or 15 mile or even 25 mile race at a much higher pace than the Devizes to Westminster. It's so important, like running a marathon, to go so steadily for the first half of the race, and the big danger is to go too fast. Maybe the person in the front is pulling too hard, maybe the person behind is saying, come on, we're supposed to be racing. We've got to just relax and let the boat flow and keep the technique really, really smooth. Most crews are so overfed and over hydrated that there's just no need early on. Later on in the race they'll need support every half an hour or so, but this soon it's better let them just settle in, find themselves mentally and get over the excitement of the start itself. We saw one or two crews that have been working quite hard, stopping and taking a few minutes for something to eat and something to drink. Slower crews going straight through. So the choice is theirs. If they feel they need to eat and drink, fine, maybe it's better to stop. But if they get used to stopping too many times like that, they're going to lose an awful lot of time on the race overall, maybe an hour and a half. A 5-minute stop at this stage is just way too much. It would equate to 1.5 minutes pit stop in a Formula 1 car. Everyone would be saying, why? It's understandable because they feel they need more food and drink, but really they should take that food and drink as they move and get going again.
Back at Devizes, more crews were taking to the water. Those going for fast times were in the paddock and making final preparations, while others were saying farewell to family and friends.
We're here at Savernake Tunnel, approximately 16 miles into the race. The tunnel gives an eerie kind of a feeling. We rely so much on the visual senses to be able to balance the kayak. Going into the dark tunnel, all of a sudden, with no light, all of the normal feeling is deprived and the boat starts to wobble a little bit. People do get anxious here. Overtaking is not allowed because the wash of the boat bounces back against the brick walls. The senses are really confused and the boat feels so wobbly. It's not a good place to have a swim, there's nowhere to get out. Rescue boats at each end, but it does mean quite a long time in the water. So paddlers approach here with a little bit of fear, a little bit of apprehension, and it's a good thing to get this one out of the way.
You're just keeping an eye on the tunnel's entrance, are you?
Yeah, keep an eye on the tunnel entrance, and if anyone falls in, go and fish them out. That's all. So, not too important, but important enough.
One of the challenges with Savernake Tunnel is that the race doesn't have right of way over people on holiday and enjoying the canal and narrowboats. And it's not really safe for boats to go straight through the tunnel towards an oncoming narrowboat.
So the boats are stopped by the marshals and given a time allowance. Each of their stopping times is taken on a stopwatch, and when they are restarted, the time allowance is corrected at the end of the race. Much safer way of doing things, but it's hard for the athletes because it disrupts the flow. On the other hand, it's good to stop and have a chat with friends in the race and get to know people a little bit.
Have you had many hold-ups?
We've had 2 so far, and that's it. Yesterday, so I gather there was 3 hold-ups and 90 boats held up. So it's quite an important bit to look out for.
Back in the paddock at Devizes, I decided to put some of the crews on the spot about their race plans.
So what time are you going there?
About 45 minutes from now. Anything between 2 and 2:15, depending on. We're kind of about 2 o'clock. We'll do the sort of let's go then, and by the time we get to there, it'll be 10 past 2.
David Kelly and Carter Johnson of Team Easy Living from the United States were in the capable hands of 6 times world champion Ivan Lawler, who was heading up their support team.
We haven't really got a clue. Somewhere around the 17 to 18, in there somewhere.
It's hard to judge, isn't it, today?
If you've never done it before and you've never ported in your life.
I think we're in good hands with this guy. Should I be worried?
I'm sorry?
But should we be worried with this guy?
Of course. But you are getting advice here from somebody who I don't think actually has ever done the non-stop. Not the non-stop, no, Christ no. And I never will. I never will. There's no earthly reason why anyone would do that.
You can only assume you're getting advice, therefore, from somebody who's considerably more intelligent than you can possibly be.
Yeah,
if you're doing
that's
it.
the truth.
Yeah.
That is, I hadn't looked at it that way.
We definitely don't.
Brian Greenham and Tim Cornish, holders of the course record for 30 years at 15 hours and 34 minutes, slipped almost unnoticed into the paddock. To say these men are legends in the DW community would be a gross understatement. But today, at this time, they were just one more crew taking on one of the world's greatest endurance races. A few weeks earlier, I spoke to them both about their DW plans at the Waterside Sea race in Newbury.
Brian and Tim, record holders, 30 years on, and you're setting up to do this again. What on earth are you doing?
Just 30-year anniversary, and we thought we'd do it for old time's sake.
You've flown in this weekend straight from South Africa just to make sure you have paddling time?
I can only arrive just before the Devizes Westminster race, so decided it was a good idea to come now and have a proper preparation with our equipment, and just as well we did, because we had a few problems today, and it would have been a disaster if that had happened on the Devizes. So.
And you've clicked back in with Brian again?
Yeah, I raced once with him last year at the World Masters Champs, but before that we hadn't paddled for 27 years, but we still combine well together. So.
Brian, how did the race go for you today?
Hard work. But good fun.
Yeah.
Got back together again.
Yeah, good to be paddling with Tim.
Yeah. Well, we've still got a bit of things to sort out together.
Right.
Particularly paddles.
And on the DW itself, what time will you go for?
You can't really predict a time. It's so dependent on the conditions. But I'm sure we won't be as fast as we were 30 years ago.
That would be just incredible, wouldn't it? Even to be within an hour or two of the record time would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure.
We wish you every luck for the DW and let you get off and get changed and get some food now.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go.
And yes, they had to pass all of the safety checks, just like everyone else.
We're the only crew with more GPSs than paddlers.
Yeah.
We have got more GPS equipment than we've got paddlers.
One arse, two arses, three GPSs.
Ivan, explain to me what GPS is going to be used for on a dead stroke course.
I have no idea. I think certainly one is for the islands on the river and stuff, so I know they're marked on which side to go. Other than that, I guess it gives you your average speeds and stuff, doesn't it?
One paddler that I hadn't seen all morning was one half of last year's winning crew, Ollie Harding. Then James King and Richard Hendron arrived bearing Ollie's race number, which meant that Ollie must have pulled out. A great shame as he was one of several hot crews for this year's race. Still, Richard and James were themselves top competitors and capable of challenging for the win.
Who's taking over the entry then?
Pardon?
You taking over the entry?
Yeah.
So Ollie and Ian?
No, injuries. So
Shame, because they would have been another good boat.
They would have been, yeah. So we're hoping that their luck will carry us through the number.
Well, I think you're quick enough. I don't think you have many problems, so you'll be fine.
Cheers.
Saturday afternoon, race day, 2:30, and we're right the way down to the final starting boats in this extraordinary race where nearly 200 crews have already gone and started leaving from 7 o'clock this morning. The fastest paddlers are absolutely the last to go. The reason for that is that they have to judge their time to arrive at the tideway at Teddington absolutely dead on. Get there early and they will be on dead water, maybe even the tide will not even have changed. Get there too late and the best flow of the tide as it goes out through London will have gone and they will miss the advantage. Either way, if their calculation is wrong, they could add an hour to their race time. And that could well make the difference between 1st and 10th place. So from a tactics point of view, this is what this race is about. It's not so much the tactics of racing an alternative crew, fellow competitors. It's about knowing oneself, knowing the limits, knowing how fast you can go, getting the best from your partner in the double kayak, and staying on that limit all the way down to Teddington with deep inner confidence and resolve to keep right on the threshold of pain the whole way. The guys that get it right have every chance of winning this race now, and the ones that get this wrong may not even finish.
You like the running start?
Yeah, I think so.
No, definitely not. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Marianne.
We will do our best for you.
We'll see you guys somewhere.
Don't hang around.
Always keep moving. Even if you're faffing with something, just keep walking. Okay, who's got the car keys? You have.
The main start infrastructure was beginning to be dismantled, but there was still no sign of Owen Peake and Danny Seaford. So I took a little time out to chat with long-time competitor Ian Wilson, who had nearly tasted record-breaking glory himself in the past.
Yeah, but brilliant. It's good to see so many people here, and Brian Greenham's here, and I wanted to meet him, but he's disappeared, didn't he? I think he's gone.
He just went just behind us.
I don't know what he looks like, and I just wanted to shake him by the hand.
Well, you might get a chance if you nip over there quickly.
We got the 2000 was the year we got stopped, and Sean and I won for the record, as was Jim and Mick, and we got pulled out of Eton at 15:15. No, we predicted time of 15:15, and I just was in pieces really, but that was it. and that was just a disappointment, because I think that was the year if it was going to be broken, would have been that year.
Oh, we didn't capsize.
Then finally, once almost all the other crews had left, Owen and Dan arrived, and their support crew sprang into action.
Hello, Mal. You alright?
For the other boat.
There's not many people left now, are there?
With so much riding on this paddle, nothing was being left to chance, and the whole operation was reminiscent of a Formula One team in the pit lane.
It's quite nice actually. This morning we thought we had another fast crew. We thought there was going to be some games with us here, who was going to start first, and then the other guys were going to chase, but it appears they left at 2:30, so it's really taken the pressure off us now, and we can just get on and run our own plan. Hendron and King, yes.
Yeah.
So we can just run our own race now, and hopefully, touch wood, everything will be okay, and we'll hit the tide perfectly and have a smooth run down.
haven't paddled 18 hours. I haven't done any one action for 18 hours constant. I don't know whether I'm just going to go mad. I want it done. I really want to do it. I want to do it right. I don't want to have to come back and do it again.
It's one of the classic races in the world.
Today's the day for you.
Today is hopefully our day, our weekend.
Okay, guys, straight in. Met your dad. Okay.
So Owen Peake and Danny Seaford, absolutely the hot favourites for today. They've made themselves the favourites by waiting to the very end. They have absolutely no alternative now other than to go for this win. If they drop off their winning pace, they will not make the time at Teddington. So it really is a do or die race trip down to Westminster.
I paid a lot of money. I want my 425 miles. Don't shorten this.
And then, after all the waiting, all the speculation, they were off. Everybody knows this race is about proving oneself with one's partner and not really becoming tactical. It is not a tactical race. It's a race where you set out and do the best you can all the way down. And I think there is an advantage for crews that wait to the very end and then go just that little bit harder down to Reading to arrive there at more or less the same time. And to take a 15-minute advantage at halfway is a fair bit. It leaves a little bit in hand for contingency. Yeah. But that just starts to put a little bit of pressure on the fellow competitors. But 90% of this race is racing oneself. Not even the physical side, it's the mental side of just keeping going, keeping working, keeping eating, keeping the energy flowing, and doing the very best you personally can. If you get off the river having done your best, it doesn't really matter if it's 16 hours or 26 hours. You will feel good because you have done your very best. Late afternoon at Hungerford Common, 25 miles in, and it's just started to rain lightly.
Alright guys, in here. Mind the metal on your hands. There's a metal rail here, yeah, right? Mind your hand.
Portaging is an essential skill in the Devizes to Westminster race. With over 75 locks to negotiate along the course, it makes the challenge that bit tougher. In its simplest form, you have to get out of the boat as quickly as possible, lift it up and run around the lock, dropping the boat back in on the other side.
You need to empty your butter.
Crews often encounter road crossings at these locks, and good support is essential, both to minimise navigation and to ensure safety.
You all need a change at this one?
Portaging also gives crews a chance to take on fluid or food without making a dedicated stop. There are as many different portage techniques as there are boat types, and this portage at Hungerford is typical of the challenge faced by crews on this race, revealing the need to be flexible with your carrying technique at each lock, so you don't lose any time.
Oh, look good, TV. On your shoulders.
Jean Watson and Richard Lovell make swift work of the get-out, only to be held up as Lee Howson and James Hemming altered their carrying position at the gate. It didn't cost either crew much time, but certainly Jean and Richard were more efficient and will have used less energy than Lee and James. In a game where energy consumption is everything, small efforts like this soon add up. Newbury and the 34-mile mark. Paddlers approach the checkpoint at Newbury from the west with a frustrating little double portage that tempts those less familiar with the course to run the whole section. The first obstacle is a low swing bridge, and the second a traditional lock, right in the heart of the town centre. By the time Kim Wetherell and Henry Hendron of Richmond reached Newbury, light was just starting to fade and the race was beginning to enter the transition between day and night.
Stupidly long races, isn't it? It really is. Stupidly long. Stupidly long. We've got our crew over there, thanks very much. Okay, no problem. Your star, thanks very much. All right, see you later. All the best.
As they approached the Newbury checkpoint, the mixed pair of Watson and Lovell looked as smooth and relaxed as when leaving Devizes, but they had a fight on their hands with Wetherell and Hendron ahead of them on the water.
By the time we get to Newbury, the cruise will have been on the water for up to 8 hours. Slower cruise, that's a long pull. Faster cruise will get here in 4 hours or less. Quarter of the race distance, but it is getting cold, the light's going fast, life is getting much tougher.
We headed out to the eastern edge of Newbury to try and catch the fastest crews as they came through and get a handle on their pace and performance. But before we'd made it through the lock, we came across our two old friends who'd capsized barely 100 metres from the start in Devizes. This time, though, they seemed to have a far bigger problem.
That was solid earlier. That was a repair we didn't do. It's buggered. It's just leaking. Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Fine.
Okay.
We're not too tired. We're feeling fine in terms of, as in we could go a lot further, but in this boat, I think we struggle a great deal.
Okay.
So we're going to make a decision shortly as to whether we can it
because we're
before darkness
or
because
we don't really know the route or anything.
Course of action is to go on for another half hour, and then we will quit. And then we'll take over as support crew.
You've got 8.5 hours.
Can we claim we've been defeated by our vessel?
Yes, I think you can. The only problem with that is the captain has to go down with it. Which one of you is the captain?
Well, we thought we planned both. This is it.
Him.
Mitch's swimming isn't great though.
Yeah.
The first of the fast crews to show was Rob Stainsbury and Paul Hayes of Richmond, but shortly after, Americans Carter Johnson and David Kelly arrived.
Reach. Sweet, right here. Good. Good. In. Hi guys.
Well done, boys. How are you going?
Good, thank you. Safe?
You're quarter of the way in now.
Fine.
Quarter of the way in. All going well?
Can hear you.
1/4 of the way in.
Yeah,
1/4 of the race. Good stuff.
Thank you.
And Dan Hocking and Grant Pepper were just behind them.
Well done, boys. All going well?
Hey, not bad, thanks.
With the light now fading fast, we got our first glimpse of record holders Tim Cornish and Brian Greenham. The time was looking good by our calculations, but were they still paddling strongly? We'd soon find out.
Come on, boys. "10 minutes behind Carter and David."
Okay.
Then Joe Lyons and Edward Adey showed.
How's it going, Joe?
Well, now we've got over the weed problems a lot better. We had really bad weed issues on the long pan. Okay.
Brian and Tim are really powering away. Good luck, guys.
Yeah, cheers.
Well, Tim Cornish and Brian Greenham are going very well. They're paddling very powerfully, quarter of the way in, and really they look like they're just starting a 5-mile training session. Absolutely powered out of the portage, very determined look on their faces. They went through here at 2 minutes past 8. We're now going to see how Danny and Owen are doing. They need to be here within 15 minutes if they're going to catch them by Teddington. They need to be here soon.
Hi, Alan. It's Matt here. Hi. How are they doing? Are they into Newbury? Right. Right. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Almost as soon as we got back into Newbury, Owen and Dan came powering through. Had we got our calculations wrong? Were they struggling? It was too early to tell, but all would be revealed as the race progressed. At the checkpoint, we crunched some numbers, and it looked like Dan and Owen were still in fact on track, but they were going to have to do the longest night paddle of all the fast crews. One crew not fazed by nightfall were father and son pair, TJ and Thomas Rose. TJ having finished the DW more times than anyone else, with 18 runs.
This is my first time.
I'm 60. Denise, how old are you?
26.
26.
This is taking father and son bonding just a little bit far.
Yeah, a bit too far.
It might be the end of that. Tell me about what you said a minute ago about your...
Oh yeah, we're the only crew. We're the only crew that's actually kneeling. We're in a Canadian canoe. A lot of the Canadians are what's called sitters, but we're kneeling. We're kneeling all the way.
I don't know why. We're doing all right there, I think.
After 54 miles, crews hit the Thames at Dreadnought Reach, just to the northeast of Reading. This is the base of Marsport and Wokingham Canoe Club, and there is a compulsory additional portage. This portage is different to all the others, in that it is included primarily to give officials a chance to check the condition of paddlers, to ensure that they are all fit to continue. Many, if not all crews, also use it as a place to refuel, regroup and change clothes before continuing through the night down the Thames. Given the time of night, a fairly sizable crowd had gathered, some waiting to see how local crew and race favourites, Owen Peake and Danny Seaford, were getting on. Others were eager to witness the return of Tim Cornish and Brian Greenham, but they were to be disappointed, as news was just beginning to filter through that Greenham and Cornish had pulled out at Aldermaston through injury. Right on cue and looking in pretty good shape came Peake and Seaford, but their turnaround here would give a clearer picture of just how well they were going.
Another one. And some food, Ursula.
Some more food? Yeah. Oh, you got a trouble. Oh, the wet one coming off, yeah?
Yeah, wet one off.
Okay, go.
Sandwich
Is there another keg there or not?
Take that keg, it's fine.
Yes, right.
We're trying, it's just a bit wet.
We've got the fresh fish popping.
Which rose spider? What do you want?
What that?
Go on, Peake. Well done, Dan. Well done, Dan.
So we're going to have Dan in the front?
Yes. Yep.
There's a lot of water in here, guys. We're going to empty it out.
Okay.
Next one, Anne.
I can't go over. How nice are sandwiches are?
That's good, that's good. We've got hot cross buns. Yeah. Got more food than that, or?
Yeah,
yeah.
Is it ready yet?
Right place.
Massage.
Second. Second, guys.
Bye-bye.
What's happening? Light on, guys. Do you want all of these done up? This is a crap buoyancy. So don't ever wear one of these again. Stand up.
This is tough.
We've got fresh drinks there, yeah?
I'll enjoy it when I get to Westminster.
Probably not the right word, is it?
No. It's a good challenge.
Earlier on we saw some of the complexities of portaging, but at night it's a completely different ballgame. The portages aren't lit and support crews have to minimise torch use to avoid blinding the paddlers.
Back in there. Yeah, you're downstream of the weir now, so you're fine.
And where are they heading? Heading up there. Yeah. Okay.
To illustrate just how difficult these night portages on the Thames are, we went to Chertsey Lock, which lies between Staines and Sunbury. In daylight, the route is clear. Portage on the right, carry the boat up the steps and along the top path before dropping down on the other side and back on the river. In the dark, it's chaos.
You go that way.
Stop! Stop!
For sake, Henry!
To ensure we made no impact on the paddlers and crews, we filmed without lights. And the footage gives a truly accurate picture of what it's like to portage on the Thames at night.
I have them here. I have them here. There's one. There too.
Yeah, I spotted him on the bags. That's it. I don't know how we got it, but we got a nice fucking hot coffee now. Good. Okay, you get Pepsi. Okay. That's it. And glucose sweet. Yeah, we have one glucose sweet each here. This way.
This way, this way.
This way. You need to turn around. Be careful, Don. Don't fall in the river. Yeah. Okay, get down there, lads. Are we leaving the boat over here? Over here. Down here.
Yeah. Okay, you water.
Okay, there's a step here, lads. You're going that direction. Front of the boat is open. Watch your head, Dara. Yeah. Okay, watch the back of the boat down with the skate. Yeah. Watch the rudder, Don. Keep the rudder up, Don. Watch the back of the boat. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Forward at 2 inches. Forward. Okay, clear.
Okay, leave the boat there on a second. Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Leave the boat a second, guys.
Okay, that's good. Keep that thing down there, will you? Okay, hot coffee. Black coffee. John, sorry, black hot coffee, sweet, no, I can give you.
One more portage down, plenty more still to come. Finally, at daybreak, crews reached the focal point of all of their planning, Teddington Lock. The last portage and the final obstacle before freedom on the tidal Thames. It was high tide, and for those who'd managed to get themselves to Teddington on schedule, this was a sweet moment. For some, the sense of relief was palpable, tempered only by the fact that there was still another 17 miles left.
That one's gonna be a beaut. Yeah.
For some, it was all they could do to stay upright. We're at Teddington, the last portage and the critical link to the tidal Thames that will take paddlers onto the finish at Westminster. Kim Weatherall and Henry Hendron arrived still looking strong, but had they done enough to get a lead on Watson and Lovell to be the first mixed pair? They were leaving nothing to chance and giving it everything they'd got. Americans David Kelly and Carter Johnson had successfully navigated the Thames blind and arrived at Teddington in good condition. Matthew Bailey and Peter Howson just about had the legs left to portage, but only just. Then Gene Watson and Richard Lovell arrived in great shape and looking as fresh as they did at Newbury. Perhaps they really were the stronger mixed pair. The final push to the line would tell. Putting in at Teddington was a challenge because of the slope, but some were coping with it better than others. While some crews seemed rather keen not to wake the neighbours. After what seemed like an eternity, and right on the limit to catch the best of the tidal flow, Owen Peake and Danny Seaford arrived. They made the window at Teddington. Now we would have to wait until Westminster Bridge to find out whether their big gamble, leaving so late on Saturday afternoon, had paid off.
"125 miles from Devizes, mission accomplished, and we're here at Westminster." There's an irony with this race that it starts when you're feeling fresh on a very easy, narrow canal, and finishes when paddlers are totally and completely exhausted on the wide, fast-flowing Thames. It's grey and cold weather, and paddlers are so pleased to see London, but enjoy very little of it, looking just one bridge after the next until they reach Westminster and are pulled out of the river, totally exhausted.
Weatherall and Hendron pushed right to the line and looked impressive as the fastest mixed pair at that point. They'd have to wait for Watson and Lovell to come in later to see if they'd done enough to beat them though. The American crew of Kelly and Johnson kept their easy living style intact all the way to the line and clinched a well-deserved third behind Richard Hendron and James King, who we'd last seen powering out of Teddington at dawn. Some of the most impressive crews were the Canadian canoe paddlers, like these guys finishing strongly. It also later emerged that James Cracknell and Bernie Shrosbree had successfully completed the race, and in a good time, clinching 16th position with 20 hours and 36 minutes. Watson and Lovell did hang tough to arrive as the fastest mixed pair, and 8th overall. And then, finally, Owen Peake and Danny Seaford came into sight to claim victory. Their gamble had paid off, and they made it to Westminster in a time of 17 hours and 16 minutes, some 13 minutes ahead of their nearest rivals, Hendron and King.
I kept saying to myself, all I wanted to ask Owen is, can we stop for a second? Can we just take it, we'll just put our paddles down and have a little rest. And then I'd say to myself, but if I rest, I won't be getting there and I'll have to be out here longer.
No, I'm definitely leaning back. Dan's leaning forwards. Yeah, I think we're roughly paddling on the same side of the boat, but, it's not a good crew at that point. But as I said before, if we weren't in that state, in those last few miles, we hadn't tried. I think my last words to you is keep paddling all the way to the line. And then I crossed the line, and the next thing I remember is literally waking up at Dan's house. My body then just completely shut down. Mentally, I shut down. It was, you hear about people who have horrendous accidents and what have you and wake up. And it's not that they've maybe undergone some kind of trauma or whatever, but they've just blacked it out completely. It was like a dark time in their life they don't want to remember. And I have no recollection, and people showed me photos of me stood up having conversations, and I've got no recollection until I wake up at Dan's house Sunday afternoon.
Because Owen shut down as soon as we crossed that. It was the last moment. Dan paddled across the line, rudder went across to the right, and then I didn't hear another word out of him for a good, 20-30 minutes until I came to see him in the first aid tent. And that was it. And because he'd gotten very, just had no response whatsoever, the guys at the steps sort of were duly concerned, because if someone's not, they can't validate what kind of condition there is. And I've gone the other way. I've become crazily chatty. I'm a very antisocial person. I don't like talking to people anyway, but I was all the way down the race. I was conscious of how grateful we were to our support people, that I wanted to be polite and courteous and keep my spirits up, especially because at D I couldn't say anything because I'd lost my voice. So I felt like I needed to say thank you all the time, and I just kept doing that to the point I probably sounded quite silly. I was saying that was a nice bit of food. I was going into details that were just very irrelevant, and that continued. And it was a relief to finish. And yeah, I was probably deemed silly and annoying. Plenty of people laughed at me.
It's a brilliant race to be part of. I think that's it's something you've really got to race to experience. I thought I knew the race.
Nothing, you can't really explain it until you've done it. And I think everyone should do it. I think it's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So there we are. An extraordinary race, an extraordinary challenge. Different things for different people. For some, a physiological challenge. For some, a mental challenge. For some, a search deep inside to the reserves. Without doubt, paddlers that finish this race are immensely proud of their achievements, and rightly so. It's one heck of a race. Could you finish it?